Or maybe you could even do like a renewal thing where if there's like something in your life where you're like, I really want to get back into filmmaking or something. Go take your camera, put it in a box, wrap it,
right,
and gift it back to yourself.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 395 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm a Grinch.
I'm Sam, and I'm the artiste.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is December 22, 2022.
Ooh,
Man, that's a good one.
that's a really good one. Damn.
It's hard to keep track of how many twos you're on, but otherwise really
What's
good.
the full American date format? 12222022.
That's great.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Numerous twos. Before we get started, we do have a warning. There will be profanity in this show, so it's gonna be great.
I was gonna throw in, but I wanted to let you finish your thing. You mean tumorous because of all the twos? Because you were like it's numerous, and then
Yeah, that's good.
it's like two.
Tumorous.
Sort of cancery.
Yeah, but there's like lots of it.
It's benign, it's
tumors, whole things are like there's a bunch of it.
Yep. Also, we'd like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you very much for your monthly donations. It helps keeps the podcast running. It keeps us motivated. It really just puts a pep in our step.
Yeah, we boost my self-esteem, and especially the dark wintry months. Just kind of need that, You feel good. Like, okay,
Yeah,
It is dark. Have we hit the solstice? Wait, is it solstice? What's the thing?
solstice.
Is it the winter solstice? That's the name, right?
It's solstice on both ends.
It
right?
is,
There's
okay.
the winter solstice and the summer solstice, which one is the longest day of the year and one is the shortest day of the year.
Yeah.
It's like bi-weekly, It could mean anything.
Whatever. But yeah, isn't it? Didn't we just hit it, or we're about to? Like we're just on the shortest day.
Yeah,
God, I hope so.
it's coming.
They just keep getting shorter. It is weird just to be like you just look outside. It's 4 p.m. and it's
Dark.
pitch black.
Sometimes I think, if you moved closer to the equator, then you'd get longer days in the summer, right?
Yeah,
You'd
my
have
wife's
more
family came
even
up
days.
to visit, and so my mother-in-law was here, and she was like, and she drove from Houston to St. Louis, so it's a long drive, right? But she was talking about how it was like they were on the drive, and it just like felt like just all of a sudden while they were on their way up, it just got dark, And I was like, well, I mean, it's getting dark really early, but like surely that's just literally the same, in
I
Houston.
think they have like an extra 45 minutes.
Yeah, they have an extra 45 minutes of
Southern
daylight.
U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even that far. I mean, it's a 12-hour drive, so we're talking, United States distances,
Geography,
right? So
yeah.
it's actually pretty far. But still, I was like, that's
It's
actually
like the size of Europe.
that's really significant, especially when our days are 4 hours long. It's like having an extra 45 minutes is quite a bit.
Yeah, but the problem is if you do that, then you're hot.
Yeah, because then the summer days are also 45 minutes longer, and that's
Everything is hot all the time. So I'm not. Are the summer days longer? Because it seems I thought they would be more even. Where it's like because if you go to the tippy top, the pole, then it's like for part of the year you have only day. And for that part of the year you have only night. Right. And so it seems like as you get closer to the midpoint, then like the balance would just even out. Where like
I guess if the
size of
Earth is
fluctuations.
tilted such that the midpoint between the two cities on the round curve, is like that's the part that's in the plane with the sun. So that's the closest. Then wouldn't they be equal?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't
This
know
is
how
something
this
we could
works.
Google, but I like trying to just deduce.
When things are when things are tilted and spinning, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
So I think probably what we should just probably look into untilting the Earth, and that would probably
That
smooth
seems like
things
good
out a
way.
lot.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Then if you're on the pole on the like the North Pole or South Pole, it will just always be sunrise.
Well, it depends
Just
on
100% of the time.
where you stop tilting it. Because if you just do it like if we tilt it up so that like the axis is perfectly perpendicular to the
That's what we
plane
need, yeah.
of the orbit, if we do that, then I assume it's just like kind of night all the time on the poles because
Does
there's
the
such
plane
an
of the
angle to
orbit
the
not
sun.
like twist over time or anything?
I think it's a little twisty, but they're all like pretty flat, like remarkably flat.
stable.
There's some reason for that. Some kind of
Wait, what do you mean the plane of the orbit? You're talking about like does the
So if you got the
like,
sun in the middle,
we're orbiting
and
around
then-
the sun in the middle, like so there's a plane that our orbit lives on, right? So like,
My
if
question's like, does that
if our
spin?
rotational axis goes perpendicular to that instead of tilted on it, just perpendicular on it, then because we still like get closer and further from the sun, so you're still gonna have like hotter and colder, but not to the same extent because it's the tilt that drives a lot of that because it's changing like
Seasonality. Yeah.
Oh, so you're asking you're asking like does our tilt shift?
tilt
over-
shift.
Yes,
Because technically, like,
not the tilt
things-
of the Earth, but the tilt of the entire orbit of the Earth.
I think that has to be stable. Like there's
Yeah, that's stable. There would have to be some kind of outside force that would change because that's just we're like a bullet in space that's just got speed.
we're just falling, and you
And that's
fall in a
what-
plane.
Yeah, that's what creates the orbit is we just have a speed and direction. Right?
Actually, we're following the curvature of space time, but as far as we can tell, it's flat. Even though the fact that it's not flat is why we're attracted to the sun. Physics
I'm
totally
attracted
makes
to the
sense. It's
sun.
very
Sun's super
easy.
hot
It's very
right now.
easy and
Sun's-
intuitive.
So it's hot
so
AF.
hot.
Yeah, don't touch it. Is my advice.
Now, speaking of things being hot, let's talk about thickness.
Yeah, this is
Sam
pretty-
wanted to talk about thickness.
Well, so-
with two C's. Right?
yes, a very particular kind. This morning, my wife and I were chatting, and every so often when I either crack a joke or use an idiom, then she tries to infer what it means and then can't, and is just sort of confused for a short time. And when she realized that she was just kind of confused, and then I explained what was happening with this joke I cracked this morning, and she goes, "Oh, sorry, I'm so thick." And I was like, "I think you mean dense."
I think they both thick
people
does-
use
they
thick.
don't
Yeah.
they
use
did
thick?
anyway.
As like mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not so much anymore because of the
I thought you'd say
double meaning.
like you have a thick skull is what that would mean.
I think
never
that's
heard someone
kind of
say
like
thick as in
and
like-
yeah, it might be like the shortened form, like I don't know, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it was able to be used in that way.
The more
but
we
not
talk about it, the
anymore.
less sure I become. But I'm pretty sure.
I've never heard someone call someone thick for not getting something. It's always dense or thick
like,
skull.
don't be thick, don't
You just
be
have real
dense.
thick skull. That's sort of a joke, which is actually, if you think about it, a hilarious statement because it's
There's just less room for your
there's
brain.
It's a rude thing to say.
Your head is just mostly skull, you know?
Or you just have high density skull,
That too.
like same room for brain, just really dense skull. That'd be pretty dope.
the thing is, no one
Thick,
can tell me outside.
thick, juicy skull.
Yeah.
But I was like, don't you ever apologize for being thick. That's fine. I'm gone.
That's fine. You do you. All right. Now this past weekend, we went on a little trip.
Adventure.
We went on a visit to Sam's place. So Sam's over in Connecticut.
Mid the
Adam
woods.
and I are in St. Louis. So we got our spouses. We hopped on a couple of planes and traversed the country. It was a great time. So I think we want to talk a little bit about what it's like to host people at your place.
Yeah, the
Design of
holidays.
hosting.
Yeah, the holidays are happening, and we talked about the intersection of design stuff with, everything else, or DevOps stuff with everything else with some frequency. And I feel like holidays is a perfect example of one of those things, right? That whether you're hosting or going somewhere, it's usually a lot of stress involved, just somewhere in the chain, because you're trying to manage different people, you're trying to manage schedules. You got the weather, which like right now we're under the threat of a bomb cyclone, was the new term I didn't know existed. But it's what they're calling it. A bomb
Bomb
cyclone.
cyclone.
It's apparently when it's something about when some amount of the atmospheric or barometric pressure. I'm using words. I'm not exactly sure if they're the right ones. The pressure
Go on.
in the weather system changes some like massive degree in a 24-hour period. Is what it was like. Is how you categorize a bomb.
Just say it with the confidence of GPT-3, and then we'll all be like, oh, okay.
it's a bomb cyclone created by a rapid change in atmospheric
Now,
pressure.
I thought it was a cyclone that you could bomb if you
No,
wanted
those
to
are hurricanes.
disable
Those are
it.
hurricanes. You
Okay,
can't
so
bomb.
cyclones you can't nuke. You can only
Yes.
nuke hurricanes.
Yeah, it's because the hurricanes are over the ocean, and who cares about
Who cares
whole-
about
the whole ocean?
the whole
That's
ocean?
fine.
Yeah, poisoning all the fish in our.
Yeah, don't worry about that. So
Yeah, we don't need. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think with all these things happening simultaneously, especially over the winter, it's always in the winter holidays. I think is where things are most intense, right? Because you're going to have delays, you're going to have all this stuff. So the question was, as my wife and I were putting together this little event then for this past weekend with everybody, how do we do this? We've done some hosting over the past year now with a lot of different sort of configurations of people. And we've gotten pretty good at it, I think, as far as being able to host and participate. And that's a really important note, I think, if you are a guest somewhere, is to recognize that, like, the people hosting they have
a job.
Yeah, they have a job. It's like they don't get to have as much bandwidth. Like, basically, you coming and having a lot of bandwidth is sort of equivalent to them absorbing some amount of that, right? They're creating slack on your behalf, right? And so
if you are relaxing, it's because somebody else isn't.
Yes,
that's just it's a rule of life.
Yeah. And so, but there are ways you can set up your situation.
God, that's dark. That's too true.
It's very true.
Mm-hmm. I hate that.
Well, it's true, but it's also the reality is that there's design solutions to make it so that there's just less stuff to do. Period. Right? I think
you can make everybody's lives easier. Yeah. Definitely.
Yes. And so there's stuff like having people Uber to your house from the airport, right? Or whatever else. But it all depends on what you're into. So for me personally, I like showing up at the gate, like the little, or I guess the exit area of the airport when people come, as long as there's not like some very particular thing happening at the exact same time. I just like that feel, like parking the car. I like going and waiting at the gate and then being like pumped, waiting for people to appear. You know what I mean? It's very fun. I love it when it happens on the receiving end for me too. So it's like, I just like that particular vibe. And so I think there's one of those things where when you're hosting or going somewhere, before things start, just take a beat and be like, what is it that I actually need, especially on the hosting side? What is it that I need to have happen, or what experience do I need to have at some point during this thing? Because again, you're working, right? At some point during this thing to have it feel like it's worth the time, right? And I think a lot of people get in trouble because they're not necessarily super aware actually of what that thing might be, and that's where you can run into stuff where, like, people don't want to participate in a particular thing that you actually sort of mentally for you was the reason why, or like the thing for you that you wanted everybody to do, and it's not really explicit, and so things get all wonky. So,
and then if they do participate, it'll be very half-hearted.
Yeah, like
you'll be bummed out.
Yeah, and it is the case. Like, especially if you're gathering a bunch of people together, usually there's something that you kind of want the whole group to be able to do, or even like some particular vibe to hit. So what I did before everybody came is I sent an email that was like both spelling out a few of the just high level logistics of, like, here's some stuff that's going to be happening. I'm going to pick you up from the airport. We have this kind of food available on these days, yada, yada. And we want to do this on this particular day. But there wasn't a lot going on. But mainly what I shared was just a story about growing up together and the holidays we experienced then, and how all I really wanted over the course of the weekend was to essentially hit that same vibe as what I felt like we had, as I remember from, like, my high school days when Adam and Seth would come back from college with Jenny and Sampy, and, like, they were just bringing fresh ideas from college. They were doing just whack stuff in college. And so there's all this sort of, like, it just felt like everyone had a lot of new discoveries and stuff like that. And then also, as far as the atmosphere, we weren't doing a lot in terms of, like, there's usually like a specific thing, maybe a particular dinner or some particular family outing. But outside of that, it was very...
Or mostly just in the same place.
Yeah, you're just under the same roof. And then otherwise it's just kind of relaxed, and people pairing up in little groups or going and doing some particular thing that they want to do, whatever, but not super orchestrated, which also, again, on the hosting side is really good, because the fewer things you have to worry about, like getting everybody to or whatever, the better for you typically, as far as just how much stress you're going to be under trying to get this stuff to work. So we basically, my wife and I kind of planned out then, what was really important for us, and then actually just told everybody before they came, like a week in advance, which it wasn't quite like saying, like, hey, if you're coming, this is the reality of the terms you've accepted. But it's basically that, you know what I mean? Like, it's because the truth is, like, it's always true that's like a thing that's happening, right? Whether it's explicit or not is
well, I mean, that's the whole idea of like boundary management and relationship management, which are kind of the same thing, right? Is in this, like, somebody's saying, here's what I'm trying to accomplish in this.
Yes. Do you want to be a part of it, right?
Yeah, and the way that works in a healthy relationship is if it is possible for the other person to say, no, I don't like that, right? Mm-hmm. And then to either negotiate a different outcome or just to exit that interaction or hypothetical interaction, right?
To opt out and have it be fun.
Without it being like a crisis of some sort. And like if you can, and the way that works the best is when things are already taking into account each individual person involved in the thing, right? and where each person doesn't come in with like, here's the way this has to be, like just like, down to the tiniest little detail. It has to be exactly this, and if anybody else deviates, that ruins it. So if you ever hear, classic "Am I the asshole?" If you ever read that subreddit, right? If you ever hear the phrase, and they told me that I ruined Christmas, like if somebody tells somebody else they ruined the holiday, right?
Yeah. Or any event.
Ruined
event. The wedding.
It's
ruined this.
Almost always like the person who thinks that another person can like ruin it. Because of course, like if you like throw a
there are ways to ruin it.
There are ways to literally ruin it, but it's almost always not that. It's almost always just like they didn't do what the person wanted. And they didn't like, right?
Well, I think, but there's an important note there, right? Which is like part of the whole having relationships with people is recognizing when you're going to sort of loosen up yourself a little bit to participate in a thing that's important to the other person, or the other person then, like on the other side of this, Adam, kind of what you're talking about, reduces their expectation as far as what exactly needs to happen with regards to you so that you can be a part of a thing, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's less about reducing than it is about taking into account, right? So that it's not...
Well, it's just changing in either way, right?
Yeah. I mean from both sides, because that relationship dynamic is about... It's not about either person. It's about taking into account both people. That's what it is, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I'm saying is that it is the case that there's certain things that if I really want, for example, like everybody to come on a Friday, but you can't come until Saturday, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
There's certain things that like, there's no way to change time or what, like there are situations where you're going to end up with sort of navigating something where someone maybe doesn't want to do the thing that you actually, as like the host or a guest, find very, very important about the event, right? And that's where you get into the whole like either, just trading off and being like, okay, yeah, it's not important to me at all that this happens this way, but I get that it's important to you, so sure, well, I'll go along with it.
Yeah, it's all about trying to find that
this
reasonable middle ground, right?
Yeah.
And because I think the key is as long as everybody's being reasonable and taking everybody into account, then yeah, we're all playing this game of like, okay, like this doesn't mean the same thing to me or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But
I see you.
But it's not going to hurt me meaningfully, right? to do this thing, and so I can still come to it in good faith and.
But a lot of that requires that in the back of your mind that that you could just be like, I think I'm just going to opt out of this, and the other person would be like,
because otherwise it's an obligation and you feel it.
Yes,
and it makes you like slowly more and more mad that you're being forced to do something.
Yeah, I think that's
you only want people there who want to be there. So I also think that your roster management is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. Because like if you have a person in your family who like hates weddings and always causes a scene, don't fucking invite them to the wedding, right? Like, or if you've got the old classic, the racist uncle, right?
Don't invite them to things.
Don't invite them to Thanksgiving. Like if it's kind of whack, I think that you have these like recurring stories about like people going to meet their family for the holidays. And it's just kind of a clusterfuck, right? You always hear about people kind of like dreading going to do this kind of stuff because there's this implicit idea that like, regardless of how well people get along or how they treat each other, you should just put them all in the same room. Like, don't
put up with it.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
There's a book we talked about a while ago about, do you guys remember what it was? It's about
gathering, the art of gathering.
Yes. The art of gathering. And we recommended it at the time, and I don't remember it very well anymore, but I think we could probably still recommend it.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the whole like setting the tone and the purposeful intention of what you're trying to get out of the event before the event happens, like in a good distance before the event happens, is a thing that I took from that book. Like saying that
it should always be designed.
Yeah, it had a little cozy gif of like, snow falling on like a warm looking house with all my notes about stuff and this story about growing up together. Just like a paragraph. But the whole point is like, I'm not trying to recreate a specific thing, but a very intentional vibe, right? So once everybody gets settled and stuff, then on our side, then the next biggest thing as far as I think beyond like setting expectations and figuring out what truly for you as a person is a thing, if you're hosting, that you really want to have happen, and being, again, you could be very clear about that, like as far as, hey, it'd be really important to me that X happens with everybody or whatever the fuck, right? And certainly I think as long as you're not overdoing it on those things, and most people are like, yeah, sure, whatever, come into your house, I'll do something. And then the next biggest thing was food, because
food is always such a huge, it's like the core aspect.
Yeah, it's like, because again, everybody who exists has to eat every day, multiple times. And so it's like, if you're already managing this within, your own family of, 1 or 2 or 4 or whatever, then you have a certain scale you're operating at. But of course, when you invite people in for the holidays, the scale goes bigger. And so one of the things that my wife and I have noticed from hosting people over the last year or so is just like food moments are typically the ones where we can either get burned out or the ones where things can kind of go a little bit awry, right? Because it might be the case that people typically like hanging out in the kitchen, right? Just sort of, it's what always, any event you go to, any party you go to, there's always like a crowd of people in the kitchen at all times. Because
that's where the snacks and drinks
the food is. Yeah, there's a reason why
there's people there working on stuff. So like there's already people to talk to, Yeah.
Yeah. It's so for me personally, like I'm very bad at cooking and chatting still. I don't know if it's just like a fluency thing or if it just is the sort of like I have a hard time doing 2 things at once.
It's fluency plus ADHD because I absolutely like if I start like my wife knows that if we're gonna be doing something together, then that means that she can't talk to me while I'm doing something. Otherwise, I'll just stop doing that thing without realizing it. And
Diana's funny for this as well. I'll start chopping and she'll start telling me a story, and then she just hears the chopping stop.
Yep.
Until she's done. So
like, I can listen or I can chop. Pick one.
So I need some time to work on this stuff. So in the past, we've done our little food plans and stuff, and typically made meals that were relatively easy to put together. But even so, there's the occasion where people are chatting with you while you're trying to cook, right? And then you can't. It basically increases the load, at least for for me personally, on like energy that gets sucked out during that cooking process. So we moved this time to a model where, given there are so many people in the house, we're like, okay, let's just do a bunch of pre-made stuff in these big batch forms. So we did like a big spaghetti, and then we did a big chili. Yeah. And then, for Diana, she was like, after all this discussion about like how exactly to do this, and we're like really trying to think through the particulars of it so that we could have a really good time without like just sort of cooking the whole time, basically actively while people were here. Then she was like, I actually do want to cook on like very specifically on Sunday for everybody. And like came up with this elaborate, Chinese food meal for everybody to have on Sunday. Yeah, it's really good. But some of those things, like as we were talking about, I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Because it's going to be like, even when you're having a really good time hosting, which we did have a great time, you're going to be kind of tired afterwards because you're doing a job kind of while you're mingling with everybody, and you're doing that work of providing this space for everyone to kind of come together in. And so I think being able to modulate then, okay, yeah, you know what? I do want to push it because I want to share some cuisine. Like part of the reason everyone's here is so I can share stuff with them. And part of the thing I want to share is like, look at my cool cooking, right? And if that's important to you, then like, fuck yeah, let's go. But always
that doesn't mean you have to, right? Because that's that trick is like being able to do it only because you want to. And then you have other approaches so that it doesn't feel like something you're, again, obligated to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, when it comes to all this hosting stuff, it's like our goal is to make everybody feel like they have been thought of in particular along a few different dimensions. So whether that's like, we got you a particular gift in the case of, Christmas or whatever else that is a bit more, is like clearly tailored to you, not just like a generic thing, but like a bit more for you. Or if it's like,
yeah. I mean, on that note, Sam and Dana got, for me and my wife, which I'll say nailed it on the taste spectrum. This skeleton decanter, so that the decanter part is just like the rib cage of the skeleton.
It's very spooky.
It's very like wide. It's like a hilariously wide rib cage. And then the stopper thing on the top is the skull, but with like the top chopped off, so it serves also as a shot glass, as a cup, so that so you can basically like rip its head off, pour a serving into the head, and then put the head back on, and then you can now hold it by its rib cage and drink. If that's the kind of thing you're into, but it's pretty
you are.
Yeah. It's a big part of it for us then was saying, okay, we do want to try to get some of that feeling of that, just kind of the stupid joyfulness that you get from getting almost like toys at Christmas, where it's like, these things don't matter. I think for a long time, I've always tried to do like really, really specific gifts that I know a person wants in terms of like their aspirations. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you want to become like a video editor? Here's a book by James Cameron on Avatar, and here's like maybe a camcorder or whatever. And I think as we've gotten older, I'm slowly moving into like, I want everybody to just feel like this is fun.
Yeah, like you know what's cool? Books by James Cameron, but you know what's even cooler? A yo-yo that screams. When you use
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? I don't know, but it'd be hilarious.
And stuff that doesn't matter is particularly nice too, right? Because when you get a gift of something that like matters for some reason, like it's designed to do something, or
use it.
like you're supposed to use it, but if you then like don't actually go into that use case for some reason, right? Or especially if it's like a new hobby. Like if you're gifted a new hobby, that's like the riskiest of all, you know, because like realistically, it's not going to happen.
Or clothes.
Or clothes. Yeah, exactly. Like these kinds of things that like are actually too specific because of what they require on the other side. That as long as you're okay with the fact that it might just like never get touched, right?
Yeah.
Then it's totally fine. But if it creates that sort of sense of like, oh no, you know, like
That's
like
demonstrate that I'm using this painting set now, even though I've never painted before.
yeah, it's like in the past, my wife and I now for our birthdays and Christmas, we refer to each of our individual birthdays as our birthday, right? And so we're like, it's our birthday, we can do whatever we want, right? So we just get to both have 2 birthdays a year plus, you know, Christmas, right? And for all these holidays, we just decide what stuff to splurge on for like ourselves, because otherwise we already just get the stuff that we want because we're, you know, adults and we can go buy things. And so, but before this, I used to try to like do, like as Sam said, like nail a gift, right?
Yeah, some aspiration.
And it was always in this vein because like my wife was super into baking and cooking for sometimes one of her like ADHD hyper focused things, right? For actually a really long time. And so she was, you know, she would always hear talking about all the stuff that she like wished that she had but didn't have. You know, this was back when we didn't have as much adult money. And so like I bought her this like really good standing mixer, which we still have today, right? And she's like, use the shit out of it. I'm like, oh, I fucking nailed that one, right? And then on another event, I bought this fucking amazing like knife, like a handmade. There was a little shop that doesn't exist anymore in St. Louis. I just walked by one day. It was like that custom knife shop.
smith, right?
Yeah, it's gone now, but it used to be there. And like very like you know, fancy, like really cool Damascus steel knives, you know. And so I was like, oh, so I can get like this one of a kind, you know, it's like chef's knife, right? And so I did, and then it turned out that the way they designed the handle is just kind of uncomfortable to hold on to, right? And so
Looks cool though.
it looks really cool, but like she's used it like once, I've used it like 3 times, right? And then and then on another occasion, she was like really wanting to get into photography, but didn't have a camera, you know. So I bought her this like fancy, nice, not like super high end, but like a nice camera that was, you know, a big chunk of my money. And then she'll use it like a couple times and then never. It's just like sitting. It's like one of the ornaments that she has on her, you know, desk stuff, right? And I was lucky that at the time I already knew that I was like taking a gamble with those things because of what they require. And
They're useful.
They're useful, but only if you want to use them.
Yeah, only if you have that use case.
And so I was able to like, despite those things like being, I thought well thought out and like being expensive for the money I had available, you know, I ended up managing to not feel bad about them not being used because I was just like,
which I think should definitely basically always be the case.
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I thought it would work and it didn't, but. Yeah,
the risk of a gift. You know?
Yeah, it was a gift. That's the whole point. It wasn't about me actually, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what it all comes down to. I think at the end of the day, which is like when you are doing these gatherings and stuff, you're trying to create a moment for everybody, right? But also not. And I think a lot of people do this thing where they exclude themselves from that pie, right?
Because they're the host.
Yeah, because they're like, well, I'm in charge, and it's like, well, you are. You got some stuff to do, yeah, but also like you can ask people to do certain things, you know. We didn't cook every meal. We were like, yeah, figure your shit out for breakfast. I don't know. You're an adult. Act like it's an Airbnb with a fully stocked fridge. You know, like figure it out. Sure, you'll be fine. You can ask people to do certain things to take the load off, so you get to enjoy certain parts of it more like a guest would, right?
Well, that's the other piece that I want to talk about because you're talking mostly about like the really designed parts, right? Because the other part, because I was thinking about afterwards, like because the trip to get there and the trip back is, you know, it's travel, it's on airplanes, it's horrible, right? And anytime like my wife and I are going anywhere, so much of like the pre-trip like planning and then anxiety is about making sure we have all the stuff that we need, right? And then knowing like what we're gonna need. And knowing what we're going to need to have, right? Because like you've got your stuff, your specific stuff, right? So like you've got the lotion that you use, you've got the soap that you get all these things, right?
I think as you get older, it gets more specific.
It gets more specific, right? And like, and a lot of people like I'm pretty flexible for as long as there's a representative of the item, right? Then like I'm probably fine.
Yeah, right.
My wife is less flexible because she has sensitive skin and stuff, but still like flexible, right? And so, but you never know what's gonna be on the other side, right? Yeah. And when you're going somewhere for more than like a day, even, right? Because if you're going like on a family trip, or if you're going like to see family for a holiday for a day, you know you're gonna get force fed so much that you're like, food is not a thing to worry about. But like in this case, we're at Sam's for
days,
a few days, right? And so we know there's going to be food, right? But we also know we're there all day and all night, right? And so like, what is that? What does it mean to actually like make sure we're fed during the day and stuff? So there are all these like just kind of practical aspects of being somewhere outside of like events, you know, that are at the place. And because I was thinking about why it was really easy and chill at Sam's over the weekend. And I think actually the core reason was how much autonomy we had when there wasn't like planned stuff going on. Because the first thing that happened was like we arrived and then Sam showed us where everything was in the house. So we kind of got the lay of the land, but then showed us how to use all of the things.
Yeah. It's not just like, here's our kitchen.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, let me make sure you have the tools to navigate this kitchen so you
here's
can
how you use it, right?
And I did a low-key way too all the time, which is like Seth and I got back from the gym one day and Seth went to open the door. Of course, it's got a little keypad on. And I was like, you know what the keypad is? He's like, I do. And so I reminded him because I'd said it earlier on. He's like, oh yeah. And then he plugs it in. So it's like, you just do it in these little moments, just kind of constantly where you just take a back seat and let people do stuff in your house.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about like when I visit most places, when I go to somebody's house, right? Then so much is because even when somebody is very like, even when you believe they mean it, when they say, oh, like make yourself whatever you want to do, make yourself at home, right? The problem is that it's not your home. You don't know the rules, right? But I mean, even to the littlest detail, like everybody washes their dishes differently. You know what I mean? Like whether they put stuff in the dishwasher, how they want it arranged, how much it matters to them if it's arranged a certain way. If they want to be the one to do it because like they want it done a really specific way and everything else is wrong or whatever, right? And so even when you go to somebody's place and you're like, oh, I want to be able to like help out while stuff is happening, then you not only know if that's wanted, but you also don't know how, right? You don't know like what's the right
how it's wanted,
right? Because you know how to wash dishes, definitely, right? But like in this scenario, at this person's house,
is that a problem?
What does that mean, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's that explicit idea of like, here's how we do things here, and here's what you are invited, you know, to use,
you're welcome to participate,
whatever, right? And if you do, here's how you do it. Or even like, we expect you to, right? Because for a longer period, like if we were there for more than like a weekend, then I would have been like, okay, I need to find a way to actually like participate in like cleaning up or something related to the chores, right? For a weekend, I'm like, we're being hosted. So I don't know. Yeah. And the expectation was set up pretty clearly, just like, it's all taken care of. So I was like, I wasn't going to just start trying to take care of things. But if it's, you know, a longer period of time, then I'm going to start feeling weird about that. Right. But I think, that's that idea. Cause like anytime we have people over at our place for a meal or something, people are always like, where should I put my dishes? And can I like, should I walk? You know, there's always that question. Right. And I never thought to be like, and we didn't actually do that at your place either. I think it's one of the things that like flies under the radar, right? Of like that part of just like, oh, here's where the dirty dishes. Just everybody already knows. Hey, when you're done, this is where the dishes go, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like that kind of stuff where like you know explicitly just how everything is supposed to work and like what you're invited to do, what's already being taken care of, you know, and like.
Well, I think part of it, I think especially with longer stays, the goal shifts from actually maintaining this kind of structural difference of like host versus guest to
cohabitation.
Actually, yeah, which I think because what people really want, I think typically in these scenarios is a sense of connection. And the reality is that when you have a really strong separation like that, you can't fully connect really in like feel super connected if it's the case that one person is always only worrying about food and dishes, right? And then
it's the anxiety of knowing that you're not doing something wrong, right? Because like if you see like the host like constantly just doing tons and tons of work, right? And you can't be confident when they say, "Oh, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't need any assistance." Right? If you can't be confident that that's true, right?
People have to be honest.
Yeah, right. And you need to know what all of those little details are.
Yeah. And so that's, I think, the other piece of it then, which is to say that I think part of having one of those gatherings where everybody can actually feel connected is giving up aspects of hosting and sort of delegating them to people, but in that kind of explicit and taught way, where it's like not necessarily saying like, hey, Uncle Steve, it's your job to like make sure all the coats are on the coat rack. I mean, you could do that, but like more so giving everybody a few of the tools to just like navigate your household really effectively, know where stuff is, help out with the things that actually at the end of the day will cause you some problems, because actually it seems like you wouldn't want to do that, right? If you're hosting people, you want them to feel really welcome in your house, but actually people can really feel like they're living in your space as like in that kind of very cozy cohabitation sort of a way if they're allowed to participate in the maintenance of that space.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
Like
also many hands
guys-
make light work, right? Because the problem if you're hosting and doing everything is that then there's a lot of stuff and it's all a lot of work. But if you could find ways to make it easy and explicit for everybody else to, even if they're not like doing much, because like literally having everybody just already know like, oh yeah, just like when you're done, please put your plate right there or whatever, right? So that, but you don't even ask them to wash it. It's just like, I just want all the plates there so that I don't have to go like hunt for plates or whatever, right? It's like that something that small just suddenly made your life a lot easier. It was
Everybody feels
trivial
like
for everybody else.
working together.
Yeah, and they also lost the anxiety of like, because like the thing is when you're visiting somebody's place and you finish your food, right? Then you're like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, well, people want to be relaxed and stuff, but they also don't want to be a burden.
Yeah.
Right. And so giving in a weird way, yeah, like giving your guests these little easy jobs that they can tell obviously make your life easier, but that isn't like a huge ask of them. So like Sam asked us as we were leaving, he's like, "Oh yeah, just take all the sheets off the beds,
Strip your bedding and throw it in the basement,
and just bring that down to the basement to the laundry room before you go, because like it's just super helpful, so we don't have to like go into all the different guest rooms and like get the bedding right." And it takes like 2 minutes, easy peasy, and it definitely eases that feeling of like, man, I was here for like a whole weekend and like I didn't do shit to help, because you don't know what to do. And so actually, like as a host, just telling people, hey, do this chore, like this one small chore, is weirdly like a nice thing to have as a guest.
Or even telling people explicitly not to, because then that removes that anxiety of like,
that's true.
Of shit. Should I make the bed?
What should I do? No, right. And I think that's so much, because I think that's what I appreciated that normalcy about the whole weekend is that there was stuff that because I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, like there's all these other places that I don't have explicit information on that I haven't really thought about before when I'm hosting either, or instead like some things that I saw being thought about or realized weren't, but in any case that I wasn't doing and didn't know I wasn't doing, right? And like being like finding this, like realizing it was really just about knowing what the expectations are. And actually, I think more than anything, appreciating just how non-obvious they are, right? Which I've always appreciated to a degree, because, autism makes it hard to know what people want, and what you're supposed to be doing. But that's true for everybody, actually, right?
Yes, it's true, especially walking into someone's house. It's like, oh my god,
especially in somebody's house. So yeah, we kind of behave as if like we all live in the same way, right? So but we absolutely, like the tiniest little detail of like how people take care of their homes, is just absolutely
everybody's different.
Yep.
Everybody's different behind closed doors. Like I learned a while back that apparently there's a sizable fraction of people who apparently hate taking showers because they turn the shower on while they're standing in it.
Yeah. I also heard about that recently.
While the water is cold, and then they just have to stand in a cold shower until the water warms up. And it just never occurred to them to not be in the shower when they turn it on. Mm-hmm. And people will go like 30, 40 years before finally hearing about this new idea of, because how often do you take a shower with another person in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Probably not that often. And if it is often, it's going to be probably the same person. Mm-hmm. So if you both have this weird idea, then you're not sharing notes.
Yeah, well, I think this gets to, the last piece of it, which I think the best thing that can happen after visiting someone's house or hosting people is some exchange of knowledge, right, about how to live well. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds very
pro tips.
Yeah, it sounds very high and mighty, but it's actually not at all. So, for example, one that we took away from the weekend was I think I was washing like a marinara jar out to be able to put it in the recycling. And Jenny was like, hey, I realized actually like a year ago that since it's a jar, I could just, instead of having to manually wash it, like, 'cause my hand's too big, I can't really get my hand in the mouth of these things. She's like, you could just sort of rinse it and then just put it in the dishwasher and then put it in the recycling afterwards. And again, it's one of those things where, like, it sounds kind of fucking obvious.
Yeah.
It just
But
like
you
a
don't, you
shower
don't
thing.
think to put trash right into the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And your
And I
brain
was
is like, this isn't a dish. It's
Yeah.
a jar.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, fuck yeah. Oh my God. That's 100% correct. And that'll save me like a bunch of annoyance. They're sort of downstream. Peanut butter jars, marinara jars, all sorts of stuff, right? And ideally, that's what happens. Like, coming away from one of these things is that you as the host have provided enough room for people to, talk about some of those differences in terms of how they functionally do stuff. And then also then as a guest that you get to see some of these things that the host is employing and then be like, I'm going to take that, put that in my house. I'm going to take that technique and put it in my house. And I think that's the most fun part actually afterwards, because you leave these little imprints on each other after the house is done. In the
Compare
space.
notes so that nobody's left in a cold shower, at the end of the day.
right.
Yeah, well, anything you can do to provide autonomy, right? Because people hate having to ask about or for stuff, right? So, and just knowing like, oh, that's like this is where all of the toiletry stuff is. So like, if there's something you need, it's either in there or we don't have it, right? And like, just knowing that, and like, and also knowing nothing in there is like sacrosanct and you can't touch it or whatever, or there is, but it's all on this shelf, so just ignore that one, or that. Or in Sam's case, he had just had this like little Keurig. This is a Keurig, right?
It's an espresso.
Or an espresso. It's a little
My favorite
Nespresso.
thing from
Yeah, that's like, because like at home, I have like my own, coffee ritual. Because again, we all do our different stuff, right? And I like my coffee a very particular way and blah, blah, blah. But when I go to somebody else's place, I'm just like, all I know is that I'm going to need lots of coffee. That's all I know.
caffeine.
In some format.
In some form, it doesn't matter that much how I get it. I just know, like, if I don't, it's going to be a problem, right? And then just having this machine where it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to like learn how Sam makes coffee with his, French press and like which coffee I can use and like where the water, like, it's just, I go to this
boil
machine and I
water.
push a button, and like that's it. And but even things like, even if that's not how you normally have your coffee, having that set up when people come visit for an extended period of time means that you don't have to ask people if they want coffee. They don't have to feel bad asking for it, or because I'm sure you guys have this happen too. But like when people come over and I'm like, oh, do you want some coffee? And then I can't tell when they say yes if it's because they actually want coffee or because I've offered it, they think they should. And when they say no, I can't tell if it's because they don't want to put me out.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm fine.
And you're like, I'm making some anyways. And they're like, okay, well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll have some of your bacon sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if everybody can just push a button,
Yeah.
you're good to go.
It's solved.
Yeah.
Get that
Well, so
autonomy.
we have our break coming up. So this is we'll be recording one more episode during the break next week, which will be our last episode recorded of 2022. So we'll talk about our end of year stuff and new year
review,
predictions and all that. But let's just talk a little bit to kind of round out this episode of like what's going on over this break. So we're going to be out for like 10 days, something. So we do like Christmas through New Year's. Whole studio shut down. Just everybody go, do family stuff, decompress, do whatever it is you want to do. So what are you guys looking forward to on the break? What are you going to do?
Well, I think, I typically use them in sort of like a pair of ways. One is to get distance from work, some particular work stuff. So I'm basically wrapping up a piece of the Corrections to Progression Design stuff today. And then my goal is to basically put it down and not pick it up until either right before the break ends or sort of starting actually in the work. Because that way I get some of that, like, I haven't touched it, I've forgotten a bunch of stuff in this 10 days. There's a lot of things in there. And then I could play it more so as a play. So I could use the break time basically as sort of a forgetting time, which is useful, very useful in a creative context, I think. But then beyond just sort of purposely not doing some things, I'm gonna be doing some exploration on the AI art side of things, just to see, get a little more in there and be like, what could I possibly use this for, if anything? And, where is this all going? Because that's all a very big thing. And of course, everyone's in an uproar about it currently, but it's not going to go away by any stretch. It's already been used in the High on Life game, which is the Rick and Morty guy creator, recently launched that on Game Pass and a couple other things. They actually used it AI for voice acting, and then they left one of them in because there's an AI voice actor now who you can use basically in place of voice actors until you get your people done, right? And they apparently kept one small character as just the AI's voice. And they use it for like to fill out a bunch of these like world posters and stuff they had on the walls, just like kind of that like atmospheric art almost, which is just fascinating. And I don't think this is going anywhere anytime soon. So I want to kind of make sure I'm not, being a dummy as far as just being unaware of how that's going to shake shit up in the next year or two.
Yeah, you can try to push against this new AI stuff, but you're gonna lose hard.
Yeah,
it's happening, and it's actually it's going to start happening incredibly fast. Like over the next couple of years, suddenly things are going to be different. Yeah, in various industries and various ways,
which isn't a commentary on like that being a good thing or a bad thing.
It's just what's going to happen.
Yes.
So don't think about it's good. This is a good idea over the break to say like there's this new technology / tool that is about to just disrupt all kinds of things. How do I be on the front of that wave instead of getting pummeled by it and then drowned?
Totally. So like that's why I like to use the longer breaks for some of those bigger thinking or bigger exploration pieces that have a total capacity to just go nowhere in terms of usefulness, quote unquote, for any project, right? But that are fun to explore because they're weird and fun. So I actually have a list of tools that I want to go look at, not just AI tools, but like other weird stuff that people recommended over the last month or so, 2 months, that I'll just kind of be exploring over the break. That's kind of my plan. Some nice tools and then just kind of hang out.
How about you, Adam? What are you doing?
I've got a handful of personal programming projects that I've been like PPP.
PPP loans. Yeah.
That I've been wanting to do and like chipping away at and like little, pieces here and there. But the problem is always that like my normal work stuff is also really interesting, which is not a real problem, obviously, right? But in terms of relative to trying to do some other things that I want to do, then I have a really strong incentive all the time to be working on work stuff. For very obvious reasons, because it's definitely useful. People do it. The faster I can get stuff done, the better, right? So the incentives are really high. So that even when I know I don't have to, if I'm like trying to decide between things to do, and I have a lot of incentives for one of them that's also interesting, then that's the one I'm going to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got a handful of things that I don't need to do at all, but I want to, and I want to experiment with stuff, right? And so the two main ones are that I want to build a VS Code, which is my code editor. I want to build a theme that's designed around cognitive load. Like the whole idea is to like, how can I design this to just absolutely minimize, but like thinking about the whole time? Like, what is it that you're trying to do when you're like interacting with the editor and with the code in particular to do stuff, whether you're looking for things or editing things or whatever, and what needs to be easy to get a hold of? Like, why should things be different? Because like, people focus on themes of like making it look nice, right? And trying to make as many like different things than as many different appearances as possible so that like you have lots of information, right? And I'm thinking like, yeah, but I don't need most of that information, right? Because like so I've got like the seeds of a bunch of ideas, and I've already experimented with just like modifying my existing themes, so that's easy. To like make some stuff easier, and that was already effective. And so I want to go all in, but the tools to make it so that it's easy to like, oh, I want to just change the color of this real quick or whatever, just don't. They're just fucking garbage, right? So that's been like the main hang up is like, after I start doing stuff a little bit with this like really elaborate manual editing process, then it keeps getting harder and harder to work on it. Yeah. And so I need some tools, but tools have that big upfront cost, right? So that's what I want to, so that's one of the things I want to kind of really do that and figure out how to make that fun actually to work on. And then the other one is I have some ideas kind of inspired by the Game Changer for sort of a note-taking / writing kind of application concept, right? But it's just like the little bits and pieces of ideas, and the core.
Do some prototyping.
Yeah, there's some core difficulties involved with this that revolve around like mostly managing large amounts of text, in an easy to like navigate and efficient to navigate way, right? That I don't know. Like, and like code, like editors are really difficult. They're really complicated. There's a reason why there's so
words
few
on the
good
screen
ones.
that you can like edit.
Yeah, you'd think it would be easy because you do it all the time. You're always typing into things, right? But the technology behind all those things has been fine tuned over literally decades in most cases, right? And there's so many just little fucking details. And as soon as you go beyond just like a simple, just plugging text into a screen to having formatting, like that's your next level.
Autocomplete,
another level
spell
up.
check.
Yeah, all that. Like you just keep on adding this stuff, right? And then, but that big piece that you don't even ever hear anything about is large amounts of it. Like if you have a novel, right? Like if you ever tried to write a Google Doc that's 200 pages long, right? It slows to a crawl, and you can't navigate it easily, and like everything falls apart at that point. And so there's some kind of concepts there I want to play with to figure out like are there some of these ideas that I could kind of marry together to make a nice like toolkit for managing information, but like in a prose centric kind of a way.
Right.
So yeah, so I've got some prototyping I kind of want to do that might just be some design questions still without any actual work. Yeah, but those are my big things I think I'm going to work on, but who knows in reality what's going to happen.
Okay. Well, I'll take us home with my plans. So over the break, well, I'm going to play Crashlands 2 because so Sam, I'm doing the opposite of what Sam's doing. So Sam is the one who's sort of like forging ahead and adding tons of content to the game. It's all like gray box kind of, largely like placeholdery prototypes for everything. But it's all there and working, including some mechanics that I didn't know we could do, but the game changer made it.
Doesn't know what I've been cooking up in the back kitchen here. So
yeah, so Sam's using his break to kind of like get some distance from Crashlands 2. And I'm going to use my break to actually see what's in it because I don't know what's in the game now. And so I'm going to do a little playthrough and probably on mobile and kind of see how it's going on there. I know my phone does get hot when I play, but it is a game on a phone and that's just what happens.
It's not just a game. It's a hot game. Very hot.
Pretty hot. So I'm excited about that. Of course, I'm going to do quite a bit of, just like general house management stuff, do some cleanup, do some reorganization, kind of like, I think it's good toward the end of the year, start of the next year to kind of like, I think it's weird that people do the spring cleaning thing. I feel like New Year's cleaning is my jam, like kick off the new year with like a reconfigured living space in some way so that when you're working on like your new resolutions, your new habits and stuff, you've got like a little bit of a different space to operate in, and it's kind of a reset.
Yeah, I already started kind of working on that a couple of weeks ago, and that's something I also want to be doing over break too, is just continuing to
end of year, start of year
tighten up the space.
Yeah. That way, as you're thinking about what kind of next year you want to have, you can, update your space to match your goals in some way. I'm going to be doing that. And then we have sort of our low key Christmas thing that Sampy and I do, which is we have a Christmas tree, and a few years back we were like, we want to open presents.
It's just fun.
Yeah, we want to open. Yeah, we want to open presents at Christmas. Don't give a fuck what's in them, frankly. And so what we do basically is throughout the month of December and kind of like part of November, if we ever want something or get something, even if we're like planning on using it immediately, if we can wait, we'll just wrap it and put it under the tree.
Yeah, we do the same thing. So we got a bunch of presents, quote unquote, under there that I'm pretty sure are just like various things that we need. There might be like a box of, yeah. We have a subscribe and save through Amazon for some like canned dog food. Boom, that's going under the tree, right? Yep.
Got like a some kind of like soap. Put that under the tree, and it's funny because if you do that, weeks in advance, then you do forget what was under there. Oh, yeah. Sometimes. And you'd be like, wait, what is this? And you'll be like, oh, fuck yeah, soap. And then you can go put it in the, So there's an experience there of just
especially
being surprised
if you ride the edge on one of those things so that it's like something that you do need, but like you won't need it until like right up there. So,
If you can wait, then you should.
Yeah, so you're like,
wrap it, and then you're pumped to open it.
Yeah, because then you're like you're like almost out of dish soap or something, right? And you're like, oh fuck, I have to go buy some dish soap, and then
they probably project this out,
and then and then you open up, then you open a present right when you think you're like, oh, I have to go run to the store like really soon to get some, and they're like, oh, there's fucking dish soap.
Yeah, thanks. Because as they say, the best gift of all is not having to do errands.
It's true.
True. So we do that, and then we do get gifts for each other, but in a specific way where we basically just say like, here's our budget, like $50, $100 or something total per person, and then we just say try to get 4 to 6 things that we can wrap. They don't have to be good. They just have to be things that you got for the other person. That like. Could be a minor, like a small thing, could be a cheap thing, whatever. But like the goal is quantity. We want just like a bunch of presents. Yep. Because that's the experience, right? Like you were talking about, Adam, like, yeah, you can go like real thoughtful and try to like get the perfect gift, but it's always a gamble, you know?
It is, yeah.
And which so is like, instead you're like,
which is not a bad move, right? It's like you take the approach that you want, right? But like, you can take the gambled, thoughtful approach, or you can take the mass market.
It's basically trying to say either is it about getting a gift, just period, and opening a gift, unwrapping something.
Yeah, is it about opening presents, or is it about
presents,
or
is it about a specific kind of a gift? Yeah, because I think that's the trick, and I think.
But I think they each have their place, right? Man,
totally. Yeah. Well, ideally, you of course do both. Yeah. You always want both, but like, yeah, we've also taken the approach in recent years to you just keep on stacking stuff under the tree.
Just wrap
trees.
stuff.
There's like all sorts of stuff. Yeah, just I don't even know. There's a lot.
Or maybe you can even do like a renewal thing where if there's like something in your life where you're like, I really want to get back into filmmaking or something. Go take your camera, put it in a box, wrap it,
right,
and gift it back to yourself.
It's self-reminder.
Yep. Yeah. Honestly, that's actually good. Maybe I'll wrap some stuff up. No,
Look around your house and think, what have I neglected and stopped appreciating? I'm going to wrap that shit up. I'm going to open that.
Bring it back to the fore.
That's a good one.
That's great.
It's kind of like it's like
regifting to
it's
yourself.
like the what's her face is bringing. Does the thing bring you joy? Right? Like you look around your house and you're like, oh, this thing should bring me joy. Right?
But I've neglected it.
I need to change the dynamics of my relationship with this thing, and start fresh.
It's honestly hilarious that I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, yeah. So we got a good break coming up. We will still be recording podcast, at the normal time. So next episode will be our last one of 2022.
Yeah.
And that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa Acosta, for putting the podcast together. And thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the archives. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.